Okay, so next up, we are going to move to what I think is probably the hottest piece of international news right now, as far as the strikes that the U.S. has been making on Houthi weapons strongholds. They've struck the Houthis 3 times. The first time was the 11th, which was right when we recorded our last episode. I think it might have actually been 4 times, and I just didn't update this recently enough.
That just goes to show you how fluid and how intense we are bombing this area of the world.
Yeah, exactly. We're very specific with these strikes. We're targeting their missiles and their ammunition caches in 60 different locations. We've targeted them with over 150 precision-guided bombs and missiles. These strikes have been effective. I think we've hit like 90% of the targets, but they still retain 75% of their capacity to fire.
The Houthis do.
The Houthis do. Yeah. So it's not stopping them, but it's kind of all we can do if we want to. Of course, the broader context here, the Houthis have been shooting missiles and drones into the Red Sea to attack shipping companies in protest of Israel's assault on Gaza.
And now we have shipping companies going around Cape of New Hope instead of going through the Suez Canal, which is adding massive amounts of cost to everybody else around the world.
Exactly.
Joe Biden was asked, he's like, are these strikes effective? And he was like, effective? No. Will they continue? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's pretty much where we're at.
It's all he can do. And it is a tough situation for him to be in. The U.S. has been scrambling to assemble any kind of intelligence about the Houthis because Yemen and the Houthis just have not mattered, right? Like ever. So they're getting information on what kind of capabilities they have. Obviously, the Houthis are backed by Iran. So that's another part of why some people, including me, think that the U.S. can't really make a difference here because no matter how much of the Houthis' capacity that they take out, Iran is just going to supply them with more.
Yes.
So what the U.S. has done as well is designate the Houthis as a terrorist group, which blocks them from the global financial system. But again, they're just going to align with kind of the quote-unquote axis of resistance.
Which is Russia, China, Iran.
Exactly, which is trying to exist outside of the global system anyways. Some have even said, and I think this is an interesting point, that the situation is boosting the legitimacy of the Houthis because they've been in this state where they're in control of about half of Yemen, but are only recognized as the official government by Iran right now. Mm-hmm. And simply by being acknowledged to this extent by the U.S. with these kinds of attacks, that's legitimizing the Houthis as a group.
It definitely adds legitimacy to the Houthis in Yemen. Right.
Yeah.
Right. In the country of Yemen, the people that are there definitely see the Houthis as more, with more legitimacy now. Like, oh man, you're taking on the big dogs.
Yeah, right? Exactly. I mean, the problem is the Houthis are making an impact. They are impacting global trade. They're doing something that not only the U.S. but the U.K. and our other allies, we care about it. Like it is making it harder to buy things at cost, and that hurts people in these countries.
And we'll say it doesn't just hurt people in the imperial court. It doesn't just hurt people in Britain and the United States. It hurts people in Nigeria. It hurts people in Egypt, right?
I was just reading an article about how multiple Chinese company business owners are suffering because their shipping costs have like doubled because of this, right? Because all of their ships are now taking twice as long to make their deliveries.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not just a U.S. thing, which is why the whole rationale behind it of protesting the Israel's assault isn't really a legitimate one.
No, it's flawed. It's flawed. This is ridiculous. They're not. I can't even accept the framing because they're not just going after ships going to Israel. Mm-mm. They're going after ships. Period. They're going after ships. They have no way of knowing what ships is going to Israel and which one isn't.
Exactly.
And then what they're doing here is they're making all these companies fear going through the Red Sea and going through the Suez Canal, which that doesn't help Israel at all.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. That doesn't help Gaza and the people of Gaza at all.
No.
So and if anything, it makes the rest of the world more angry about the position. So
yeah,
I don't know. I think it's ridiculous. I think the entire I've heard I was a big proponent of stopping, of not assisting Saudi Arabia with their war on the Houthis, because this civil war has been going on for a long time.
Decade, yeah.
Yeah, and Saudi Arabia has been putting a blockade on the Houthis, which is starving a lot of people in Yemen. And the United States was participating in that by refueling Saudi fighter jets, by, you know, giving the Saudi military aid for stuff and selling weapons to Saudi Arabia. And all that should have been stopped, right? There's no way that we can be comfortable with the United States selling missiles to Saudi Arabia that are being used on civilians in Yemen. That's not right. That's not fair. But that doesn't mean that the people saying that should be pro-Houthi. Okay? No. You can say, let's not sell weapons to Saudi Arabia so that they can bomb Yemenis children. That doesn't need to come with being pro-Houthi.
Yeah, and that's an interesting and an important broader conversation to have, because there is a portion of the left right now that is just pro-Houthi.
And it's fucking gross, dude. These guys brought back slavery in Yemen. These guys want the elimination of the Jewish people, period.
Yeah.
They're not cool. These aren't like freedom fighters here. No. That's not what's happening.
No, it is a tendency to overly simplify these issues into black or white, and because these leftists are placing themselves as opposed to Israel, that suddenly means they feel they need to be pro-Houthi to feel secure in their own identities.
Yes.
These issues are more nuanced, just as we've talked about with Israel and Hamas. Both sides can be bad. The Houthis are another bad actor in this game.
And I'm going to be honest. The Americans trying to keep trade going through the Suez Canal is not the United States being a bad actor.
Exactly.
How is the United States being a bad actor? Giving military aid to Israel.
Yes.
That's the United States being a bad actor. How is Biden being a bad president? Using executive authority to get more tank ammunition to Israel without congressional approval. That is Biden being a bad actor. Is Biden being a bad actor by bombing ammunition sites of a group that wants to eliminate all Jews, brought back slavery, and is now stopping global trade? No, that's not the United States being a bad actor.
No, not at all. This is not a problem. But there is still the question out there of whether Biden has overstepped as far as...
And that's a fair question.
Right? Yeah. So there are some who say that these missile strikes and these bomb strikes on Yemen they required a congressional declaration of war before he was able to do that. It's almost hard for me to care. Right? I don't know. What do you think?
I'm pretty sure the War Powers Act, whether you agree with it or not, gave the president the power to do these types of things and make these judgment calls.
I read the War Powers. I was reading it, but it was like a week ago now, and I forget exactly what it says.
Yeah, I mean,
was it early 2000s?
Yeah, it should be 2001, right? It should be right after 9/11.
Yeah,
the War Powers Act was passed. And I'm pretty sure that delegated a lot of authority to the executive branch to make these type of snap decisions.
Yeah.
Especially when we're going after groups that aren't technically states. Now, this isn't like the United States like going into Iraq without a formal declaration of war against Iraq. I don't think it's that, right? It's not. That's not what's happening. We're not invading all of Yemen with a whole ground force, right?
No.
So I don't know.
But even that is like we used this, so authorization of use for military force of 2001. In between 2018 and 2020, the U.S. used this piece of legislation to initiate counter-terror activities in Niger, 85 different countries.
Yeah, and Niger was a big one of them, which we talked about a lot. But yeah, so we expanded our military outreach a lot using this thing under the Trump administration. So like, and even under the Obama administration. Under the Biden administration, it's actually been less than any other president. If we look at like drone strikes around the world, it's basically almost zero.
Yeah.
With Biden now, he completely eliminated the United States drone operation abroad. Our civilian casualties are bottomed out compared to what they were under the Trump administration. This is important to note, and then we'll move on here. Donald Trump increased military drone strikes, I think, by 472% as compared to Barack Obama.
Wow.
That's how much he ramped up the United States drone war.
And people see Obama so much as the drone striking president. Like he's just bombing everyone.
Trump was the drone striking president. Trump was the war president. I'm so sick of people saying Donald Trump was the pro-peace, anti-war candidate. That's ridiculous. That's only an anti-war candidate if you're only looking at war through the lens of American lives.
Yes.
If you're only looking at the casualties of war through how many Americans died, maybe Donald Trump was somewhat of an anti-war. But if you're looking at it from who drops the biggest bomb in Afghanistan, killing a bunch of civilians, that's Trump. Who ups the drone strikes 473%? That's Donald Trump. So, cut me a break.
Yeah, I'm with you. The only other thing I would talk about here is whether we think there's risk of expanding to a regional war. We know that in addition to these Houthi strikes, that tensions at the Lebanese border of Israel have been ramping up, and the Biden administration is doing everything it can to prevent that from exploding into all-out war. I don't know the risk with the Houthi part of this becoming all-out war is still the connection to Saudi Arabia, right? And Saudi Arabia's fight with them. Saudi Arabia's fight with the Houthis has been kind of winding down because they're thinking we've been at this for 10 years. They're still there.
And Houthis kind of won.
Yeah, it's guerrilla warfare, right?
Yeah.
All they have to do is survive, and they have.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of don't think that Saudi Arabia is going to be drawn back into it.
No, I don't think so either. I think it's over.
Okay.
I'm not too worried about becoming regional.
Okay.